So we are going to kick off another Think Up Thursday, and like always, we will post this on our YouTube page if anybody wants to go look that up and um, have a review, or anyone who can't make it can go back and see that. Again, I'm Brent Germany. I'm with Real Broker. Michael McCullers, my head of sales, and he is our main guy who's training agents on our team and really practicing what he's preaching today. We're going to be talking. I'll let you kind of jump in here, Michael, but just really, is it objection handling again today, or just
We're talking specifically about discovery. I know last week we talked about objection handling, and I told you that you've got to find out a little bit more about what's important to them to differentiate between stalls and objections to be
right?
able to earn the right to suggest a way to overcome it. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about conversations, specifically how to change the types of questions that we're asking to get a better response.
That's great. And I think that why don't we just go ahead and jump right in, and let's see if Michael, are you going to be breaking this up into, is this generalized to just anyone you're speaking to, whether it's your sphere or past client or online lead, or does it work for everybody?
It works for everybody. I think, again, I hate to use bad examples, but I think bad examples are some of the best teachers. If we're constantly having positive experience, you're not really learning anything about how to change things differently. And it's nice if you can do things over and over again the right way or do them a very effective way. But what if you ever encounter to where something like that doesn't work and then you have to pivot and you have to shift? And so, I think one of the things that a lot of people associate with a good salesperson is the ability to lay it on thick and just kind of sell and sell and sell. But really, the most effective salespeople are the ones that get the answers to the test. And how you do that is you just ask a bunch of questions. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about primarily how to, again, change the questions that we're asking. We're not asking bad questions. It's just we could change how we're asking those to get a better response and get our initial conversations away from us dominating that conversation to then the client dominating that conversation. And again, I think you're going to find that you're going to get a whole lot more buy-in from people when you allow them to talk and share their thoughts and feelings and experiences with you. And again, you're going to have the ability to get the answers to the tests. So you can formulate how you approach and personalize a relationship with someone based on the feedback that they're giving you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but this is more going to be about, best practices. There's nothing scripted about what we're going to talk about today. Again, it's just getting people to change how they're doing the things that they're already doing.
All right. Well, let's jump right in it. And you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth. I don't like scripts. I like just being myself and being personable and just asking probing questions. As far as scripts, I started my career at Keller Williams. I was there for 9 years, and I really, really enjoyed my time at Keller Williams, um, and learned a ton in my market center there in Plano, Texas. And one of the things that I was taught very early was that LP Mama script, and it's fine for discovering once you're having the conversations, but I feel like what we're talking about is opening that conversation. And, it's, look, for me, asking someone what their wants are in a house, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, do you have an agent? What the one part about that is motivation. That's the big one for me that matters the most in that LP Mama script. I actually think that, what's the other script? Ford. It's
Family, occupation,
family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Is that right? I
something
but
like
it
that.
but again, that's an outline, right? That's not really a script. So I think that plays into more of just getting to know people, and that makes way more sense. Anyway, so I'll turn it over to you. Let's get this thing rolling.
All right, so to kind of give an illustration of the power of changing or questioning up, Brent, do you mind participating in something with me real quick?
Okay, go for it.
So, Brent, did you make any New Year's resolutions?
Yes, you need to get in better shape. Absolutely. The same.
Did
I
you
made
not
the
feel like
same one that everyone else in the world made to get into better shape.
did you feel like you weren't in good shape?
Correct.
Have you lost a bunch of weight already?
No, like 2 pounds. It's very irritating.
Oh, so that's only three questions, but I hope that what you guys hear me asking are closing questions where it's like, you know, did you make any goals? Yes or no? Did you achieve that goal? Yes or no? Why didn't you? Yes or no? And so when you ask closing questions like that, you got to expect that the conversation is going to get killed pretty quickly. It's like if you call someone, regardless of lead source, if you're working Sphere, if you're working past clients, if you're working web registration, if you're working any sort of source, and you're trying to discover what it is that they're looking for, a lot of people ask those questions, beds, baths, location, price point, timeline, all of those things. But you also hear people say like, "Oh, are you still thinking about buying a house?" No, they may be thinking about doing it, but the fact that you asked in the way that you did is going to shut that conversation down. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit differently. Hey, Brent, um, I assume that you created, or I assume that you made some New Year's resolutions. Tell me a little bit about that and what you hope to achieve.
Yeah, I just think that I need to be healthier, so I'm trying to eat better and get in better shape.
You said healthier. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, not to give you too much personal information, but I had a heart attack last May.
Oh, wow. Man, that's crazy to hear. How'd that impact you?
I'm alive, so that's good. Thankfully, I was awake when it happened, and it happened doing cardio. So it's really hard for me to wrap my brain around working out when it almost killed me last time.
So, what are some of the changes that you've made from that time to now, and particularly since the new year?
Since the new year and before the new year, I have cut out drinking. I have gotten my, I'm working with a trainer who's writing me more of a heart healthy workout to where, and I've gotten a new Apple Watch. I've got to monitor my heart rate. It can't get over 150. So I'm having to keep it between 120 and 140. So those are some things that I'm doing and making sure that I'm eating healthier, making healthier choices, not eating out really ever anymore. So it's a lot.
How successful have you been with each one of these things that you just mentioned to me?
It's the 23rd, so I'm still going strong.
Good. What does the outlook for the rest of the year look like for you?
Hopefully done by February 1st, and I can start eating cheeseburgers again.
Boy, sounds good. I'm going to stop right there. I don't know if you guys can catch a difference there, but that conversation then switches from, like I said, it's an 80-20 rule. If nobody's ever talked to you about this, it's so important in relationship building and understanding where people are coming from. Again, I think when we talk about sales, what I mentioned before is that a lot of times we associate sales with people that can just talk your ears off and talk you to anything. It's like the movie Tommy Boy where he says, your dad was so good at sales that he could sell a ketchup popsicle to a lady in white gloves, and all the different examples that you can use. But really, the most effective, in my opinion, the most effective salespeople are the ones that get a good idea of what someone's going through and how you can support them in their goals. And when you learn to ask open-ended questions and you elicit more than just a yes or a no or yes or no, if you've ever experienced that, if you've ever been in a conversation and you're asking repetitively yes or no close-ended questions and it's just very quick, and then you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know what to do here, and it's just like, so what can I do to help you out? And then it just kind of kills that conversation. But asking those questions, tell me more about what your goals are for the year. How did that impact you? Tell me about the feelings. When you can get someone to express to you their feelings towards something, when I came aboard the team, I used to tell people all the time, learn to ask the question, how would something make you feel? And it was met with a little bit of ridicule, like, I'll never ask anybody that. Well, it's not really that specific question, but if you can get comfortable asking somebody how they would feel about something, you're going to be comfortable asking a number of questions. But if you can ask somebody how they would feel about something, you're tapping into that emotional intelligence. And emotion drives so many decisions. Yes, there are people that try to think rationally, like, oh, the interest rates are this and cash to close is this. But really, the people that are going to want to make a change are people that have an emotional investment in making that change. And what can you do to uncover that, but not just uncover it, get them to actually verbalize it to you. You'll find that if you do that, you'll find more people that will ask you, what is the next step for me, than you sitting there trying to push a next step on them. And again, it's living by that 80-20 rule. There is a time and a place to info dump on people. We talked about that this morning, looking at text interactions with an agent and their audience. But like, there is a time and a place for all those things. But if you haven't earned the right by asking a lot of questions, that is going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody wants to hear any of that stuff. But if you're coming to them with something of value based on what they told you, then you're gonna earn more clients than you probably ever expect. So I'm gonna stop right there for just a second. Do we have any thoughts on the 80-20 rule and that role play that I went through with Brent?
I'll add that those questions like how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, they don't need you for that. They have Zillow for that. They have realtor.com for that. They have everything at their fingertips in an app. They do not need you to, hey, what can I can set you up on a home search. They don't need you for that. That is something that is spam. We all have our own websites. We all have our own IDX websites that will do all of that. I particularly myself, when I'm talking to a buyer, I will ask them after I've had a nice discussion. It's like, hey, how are you looking at houses right now? Which is your favorite app? Because I've got them all on my phone. They don't want me to set them up on an MLS search. They're already looking. I will set myself up on an MLS search, and then I'll go find that property if I think it fits their needs or what their wants are, and I will go to that Zillow that they like and send it to them that way. I literally did that this morning for a client of mine whose parents want to buy it. It's like, oh, I just sent them that same one. And it's fine. But they don't need me to ask them and find out. That is good information for you to know. But there's been so many times where I've had an agent on our team come back from a first meeting with an agent or with a prospective buyer, and a lot of times they'll go show them a house. And I go, cool, tell me about them. Oh, they're looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, this price point. I'm like, no, no, no. What was their kid's name? Oh, I don't know. It's like, really? Like, you're not getting to know these people. What was their name? Oh, what was their name? Like, really? And that is, I know, and like the point is here is that, and everyone on this call is like Mark, Omar, Michael. I know you guys are all successful agents, and we're not talking about anything earth shattering and groundbreaking here. It's just being personable, but it's something that we lose sight of. I had a very lengthy conversation with an agent in Tennessee yesterday who was asking me all kinds of techie questions. And because my background's in computer science and I like all the bells and whistles, but you know what works best? Just picking up the phone and being personable and and drilling down to their motivation and their why and asking probing questions, because that's what's going to build trust. Once you've got that trust, then that's whenever you dig into all this stuff. So that's my 2 cents on all of that. And it really is, I'll give you this other example. COVID open houses went away. Now they're back. There are things that just come in and out of style and in and out of popularity and in and out of how things work. The mullet is another great example that I like to use. Apparently, that's cool again. It's not, by the way, but that's something that's made a huge comeback. And I say that as a joke, but at the same time, look what's happening in 4 days from now when the new TCPA, all of these sly dials and sly broadcasts where people are skipping the phone and just dropping voicemails on your phones. That stuff's all supposed to go away. All these mass text and auto dialers and calling FISBOs using services and ISAs and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff is supposed to go away. So things that were working and they're cool for a while have a way to go away. What has always worked is the tried and true, getting to know people and being relational. That's really all this is. And again, it's not rocket science, but a lot of times it's getting out of your own darn way and just being a human. Right?
Yep. And you mentioned open houses. I want to use some examples to kind of make a little bit more sense of what we're talking about. And you mentioned open houses. So I try to envision yourself going to an open house and or just kind of being a fly on the wall. And let's say it's a two-story house and um somebody shows up and then the agent that's working the open house, as soon as these people walk in, they're like, hey, welcome, so glad that you're here, let me show you around. And then they just start selling them on the kitchen, they start selling them on the pool, they start selling them on the media room. And oh, by the way, the seller's going to allow the projector and the screen to convey, like, I'm just selling and selling and selling and selling without asking any questions. Hey, what brings you here today? What's important to you? What was it about this house that you saw online that made you want to come here? Tell me a little bit about your home search. What's important to you guys? How can I help you? Those types of questions. Because what if that person showed up and said, well, what's important to me and what I liked about this house is that not only is it zoned for the school district where my kids currently go, but my mother, who's elderly and has a hard time getting up and down stairs, is going to be moving in with us. And I noticed that this one has a suite in the front of the house that has its own dedicated bathroom. And so I think the fault that we have, and it's natural, is to think that we know and that we assume what somebody needs. Oh, I'm not really in the market right now. And then we try to sell them on like, oh, new construction, there's a million deals going around, or, oh, is it concerns about the interest rate? Oh, there are interest rate buy downs that we can negotiate. And we try to sell them on the things that we think that we see a pattern of people wanting to know, but you've got to extend somebody the opportunity to share their story with you. And again, get the answers to the test before you respond. And when you extend somebody that courtesy, what you're doing is you're building trust because you're hearing what's important to them as opposed to assuming. And when you start just throwing out like, hey, I think that this is important to you, this is important to you, that's going to be not received very well. That's going to be like, this person's just trying to sell me a house and they're just being a salesy realtor. Can't tell you how many times I hear about that. That's actually a really good example too. You start talking to somebody and you start asking them some questions. Say, have you ever been through this before? And I know that that's a closing question, but it's a very directed question. It's like, have you been through this process before? Or what experience do you have with a real estate agent? Oh, we were looking a few years ago. Okay, well then tell me what happened. Oh, well, we were looking and we thought we wanted something, but then we got into like we put in a couple of offers and we got into all these multiple offers, and then we just decided not to move forward right then because it just was really stressful and really icky and we didn't want to deal with it. Okay, well, what did that agent do that you really appreciated? Oh, this and that. What did they do potentially that you didn't like or that you wished had been a little bit different? And start asking those questions. And then, even if they haven't worked with a realtor, then they may not know the answer to this kind of question is, what do you expect from me? What do you expect in the realtor that you choose to partner with in this experience that you're going through? And then they'll say like, well, I hope somebody that's communicative, someone that's available. We use Shawami a lot and we send people out to go and look at houses with partner agents. And I have to ask the questions like, would you be opposed to doing this? The value behind this is this, but would you be opposed to doing this? Absolutely not. I don't want you to feel like I'm putting you off on somebody else, but I want to get your buy-in to this and ask you about it, because one of the things that I hear a lot about complaints, especially if you work in open house, is my agent's never available. And so if
Mhm.
you set the expectation right at the beginning of this relationship that you're going to be available, oh yeah, I sell a ton of houses, but then you're not, you're not catering the experience to that person's unique needs. And the whole point of asking discovery questions and getting to know them is so important for setting proper expectations and a framework for what that relationship's going to look like. What do you need? What are your pain points? How can I get you to the next step and make this as easy and stress-free as possible? And what can I do to best serve you to the best of my ability? What can I do to go above and beyond what your expectations of what this would look like are? You're never going to find that out and make clients for life and VIP past clients that are going to refer you a ton of business if you just treat them like a transaction. And unfortunately, again, I think the notion of sales is that we try to sell them on things. You can be an effective salesperson and never once sell them on anything. Getting people to make those decisions based on what you're talking about is what's so important. And, we talked last week about overcoming objections. One of the things that I know people have done to great success, but I personally don't do, and I'm putting that caveat in there because I'll tell you things that I think are successful for some people, but ultimately it comes down to you and what you're comfortable with. If you get someone's true motivation, you start asking a lot of questions. What have they dealt with? What's been their past experience? What have they had to go through? And you start to understand those things. And then you get to a point where it's time to make a decision and they start stalling on you or giving you objections. You then can leverage that. Look, when we first started talking, you told me that it was important to you, Brent, that you had a heart attack last year and you wanted to live a healthier life. You said that you didn't want to continue drinking and that you wanted to start working with a trainer and that you wanted to monitor your heart rate and start making healthier decisions. Well, you're going to Country Burger every week and getting double cheeseburgers every Tuesday and Thursday. You've got a decision to make. I know Country Burger's delicious and their onion rings rule, but do you want to continue down this path and feeling like you're starting over with your health goals, or do you want to continue on the discipline track that you've been on? And so it's being able to put somebody in that accountability on them like that. And we talk a lot about accountability in real estate, but that's one of those things. In order to be accountable to someone and help them with their goals, you've got to understand where they're coming from and what they're hoping to accomplish.
And
And then
can I throw in there? I just want to
yeah,
interrupt right there.
yeah.
What Michael did right there was he mixed my personal stuff with his love of onion rings. That is not me. That's Michael. So just wanted to interrupt and throw that in there.
By the way, if anybody's ever in the DFW area, Country Burgers in Plano, and it's delicious. I'd never had it until Brent asked me to go, and it's one of those things. It's like, you want to go to Country Burger? Yes. I don't need to spend money today. I brought food, but yes, let's go. I know everybody's got those restaurants, but my point is, you know, even in that scenario, we role played that 20 minutes ago, and I still wrote it down to revisit it. And I'm actively listening to what's important to you and writing it down. And then I'm going to get your buy-in by repeating those words back to you. Again, you're never going to get to that point if you're not learning to ask questions. So let's talk about how to actually do it. The thing that I think we want to talk about is that we're not asking the wrong questions. We're asking the questions the wrong way. So when you ask a lot of yes or no questions, the is and like did you and things like that, then you're looking for a yes or no question. What we need to start doing is going back to, remember, elementary and middle school where you're taking composition classes, the who, what, why, when, how. That's how we need to reframe the question. So, oh, are you looking to buy a house? Instead of asking a question like that, well, tell me, where are you at in your home buying journey? Or are you looking to buy a house next month? Tell me about your timeline and why that works best for you. Or have you gotten pre-approved? Tell me, what options have you explored when it comes to lending for your home purchase? And just changing the verbiage up just a little bit to open it up. And I think that you need to have a key core set of questions that will apply in a variety of situations if you ever feel like you're stuck and you don't have a good question to ask. And I'll give you some examples of those. Tell me more. Why is that important to you? Help me to understand. And then, like, what did you mean by this? And how would that make you feel? I think if you can jot down some questions and have them visible somewhere and you start getting into a conversation, you're like, crap, I don't know where to go with that. Then you've got questions that are good go-to questions. Like, tell me more about that. That is a very powerful question. Tell me more about why home buying is important to you this year. You said that you tried to buy a house 3 years ago and you had an agent and you encountered multiple offer situations. How did that make you feel? How have you felt since then? Tell me, how did that impact you guys? You can ask a bunch of different questions the same way, or different ways, and just tweak it. But one of the best practices that I would tell anybody is use their words back to them, because A, it shows active listening, but B, allows you to redirect conversations down a path that you want to go. So if someone were to say to you, oh yeah, we tried to buy a house 3 years ago. Okay, tell me how did things go 3 years ago? Use their words back to them and reframe it into a question. Oh yeah, we were looking to buy a house because my mother-in-law is going to be moving in and she's elderly and she can't walk upstairs. Tell me, what are some of the concerns that you guys have about mother-in-law suites or stairs in a house? And just use their words back to them And what you should be able to do if you do that is any single topic, going back to Brent and I's role play, where he gave me all those different things, I should be able to easily go 3 to 5 layers deep on each one of those subjects. If someone tells me that they tried to buy a house 3 years ago, I should be able to ask 3 or 5 follow-up open-ended questions about that one thing. All right, where were you looking? How many offers did you write? How close were you to getting one accepted? How did that make you feel? What did you guys ultimately decide to do? And then each one of those answers, you could take 3 to 5 layers deep. And you could sit there and have a hour-long conversation. And if you added up the amount of time, it's like football. They say that there's only actually active football in a 60-minute game of 5 minutes of actual movement or something like that, because so much of it is the time clock. So you could have an hour-long conversation and maybe have only total talked about 3 minutes because you're just asking very pointed, effective, open-ended questions and letting that person talk. And I'll give you guys a really good example of this. I've got a client that's moving to Texas from Boston, and they had a really bad experience with their builder. Boston new construction is like more modular, where they bring in pre-assembled pieces and stack them on one another. This is a custom $3 million home. They're looking in that same budget in DFW and had no idea about how construction here works with building new houses. But instead of me sitting there and explaining how all this works and, oh, here's the difference and you should buy into this, tell me about that experience. What happened? And then that person literally talked, I'm not exaggerating, for 40 minutes in a row without me saying a peep. And then she got to where she took a breath and she goes, you could feel that sense of relief to have somebody to talk to this about, and then say, are you still there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just listening to you. Clients for life. I don't have to do really anything else. I could probably screw up a bunch of stuff and still keep that person as a client just because I let them talk. And so if you have a hard time with conversations and really understanding people, A, I would start learning to ask more questions, but B, I would start changing the questions that you're asking to elicit a more open-ended response and allow them to share their story with you. And I guarantee you that's going to earn you more clients. That's going to convert way more if you do it that way. Pausing there for just a second, giving her a break, letting that simmer for a second.
No, tell me more about how that makes you feel, Michael.
It makes me feel I want people to go in the comments and share, have you had any specific examples where you felt like you could have asked more questions or have ever actually seen this happen in person? And I'll tell you, if you're not working leads, like online leads, where you're getting a good amount of repetitions, you should be practicing this on the people closest to you. And I'll tell you, it will drive your spouses and your family members wild, and not wild, annoying, if they realize that you're doing something different. My wife, I'll just go to dinner with her and she'll be like, God, that traffic sucked today. Instead of me just saying, yeah, it's terrible. It's like, well, what happened? Oh, I was driving down Preston Road and, everybody was driving right next to each other. How'd that make you feel? She's like, shut up, but it's getting that repetition in. And I've got a 3-year-old daughter that is now at that point. If any of you have had young kids, she's at that point where she's asking, why? Yesterday, she asked me why the sun was up. And I'm like, because it's the time of day. She goes, why? I'm like, well, it's that time of day. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because millions of or thousands of years ago, an ancient culture decided it was a good idea to create a time scale. Like I tried to give her this super overly detailed response to this why, to try to stop the conversation. And then you know what she said? Why? 3-year-old got me talking to her like that. So we can do it. It's just we've grown a pattern of where we think that what we need to do is talk, when really all we need to do is listen.
Not rocket science, is it?
No. We joke around about the example, but the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, where they go on speed dating, they're like, just ask questions. There's so much truth to that. So Omar commented, I've had those experiences where in hindsight I could have asked more or different questions, even while motivational interviewing has been a strength of mine in other industries. It's a continued growth process. Omar, I'm curious what industry you worked in before where you got to do that. I worked in higher education for a long time, and the thing that you've got to understand about higher education, for not to get this conversation off, but for-profit education, which came under the microscope of the federal government. The whole reason why they existed is because there was a group of people that were an underserved market. You had a lot of adults that didn't have modality options to be able to go to school. It wasn't realistic for somebody with two kids, single parent, that's working 50 hours a week to go to campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So the whole idea of for-profit education came about because they thought of a way to offer an alternative learning modality for these people to go back and get their skills. Well, these folks were 35 years old on average. And a lot of people that had gone to maybe 1 or 2 semesters worth of school right out of high school, and then maybe started having family, had to get to work for whatever reason, and have not done anything for 14 or 15 years. We have to think about the types of folks that we're talking to. And I mean, there's a 50-50 chance that people have not ever purchased a home before or have ever gone through this process. So what do they know about it? What's been their experience with it? Have you ever taken these steps? Tell me a little bit more. Why is this something that you're looking at doing now? What got you to this point? What are the pain points you've had to deal with? And even people that own a house that have never had to sell and buy before. What have you looked into? Where are you getting the data that suggests that you think your house should sell at that much? What does your timeline look like? Why are you needing to sell and buy another house? All these questions. So there's a greater than 50% likelihood that there's room there for a really good conversation, but really anybody we should have those conversations with. Even if it's somebody that's bought and sold 20 houses with you. Cool. What are you looking to do now? Worked in healthcare, Omar. Cool.
Yeah, so if I can say, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man,
Yes,
it's
sir.
great.
So yeah, I wear a lot of hats, even now. You know what I mean? Sometimes it ebbs and flows depending on what's happening at the time. So I still have a connect back to healthcare. I'm still a certified registered community health worker, as well as certified registered community health worker supervisor, certified registered community health worker instructor. So so much of that, what you just talked about, and those asking those open-ended questions and allowing the client, patient, what have you, to really hear themselves, and to get them to that point of really ambivalence to a degree, to say, wait, wow, let me think about that for myself. Because I think sometimes you have to remove yourself as the end all be all guru. I know it, let me tell you, let me plant it in you, and allow what's in them to actually come out, and for them to be able to explore what it is that they're really looking for at that point in time. And then continue to build off of that with more questions to kind of bring them to a certain point of saying, you know what, I do need to do this. You know what, I can make a change. You know what, I really haven't been looking for what I really been needing. I've just kind of just been going with the flow because that's what someone else told me, or I read something and I've kind of just got off track. But now that I've had this conversation and you asked me these questions, it's got me to thinking that maybe I really am more of a 4-bedroom house type of a person rather than this 3-bedroom house of a person. You know what I mean? Just for an example. But just previous experiences in healthcare, as well as in the education field as well. So that eliciting more information from a client, a customer, is very important. So I definitely agree with everything that you said there, allowing them to really hear themselves and to continue to build off of those questions that are being asked, because ultimately they know what they're looking for. Sometimes it's subconscious, buried down in there. They're suppressing it because of those emotions that are on the surface. And then you still have to build that rapport and that relationship with them. But I think that is getting them to a point of feeling like you actually care. Why? Because you actually took the time to ask me some of these questions,
Mm-hmm.
explore what it is that I'm actually concerned about, versus telling me what I need to do. Hey, this is what you need to do. This is what the market is right now. This is what you need to go, do this, do that, do that. You know what I mean? That sends people away, or it puts people into a place, from my experience, of feeling lost, and they're more likely to be like, you know what, I'm not going to call back anymore. You know what I mean? Or I'm not going to invite them back anymore, versus it feeling like, you know what, this was kind of therapeutic talking to you. Let's continue to have this so I can continue to explore more about what my goals are. And then that leads to more and better business opportunities to say, I actually really do want to sign this contract with you as a result of us having these conversations, because I feel like you care. And I think there's a quote that gets quoted a lot, that people forget about what you do. They'll forget about what you say, but they won't forget about how you made them feel. And so I think it's
Mhm.
still the same way, even in this industry, is people want to feel comfortable. I know for myself, if I put myself in a buyer situation, even a seller situation, you know what I mean, I have to kind of like put myself in their shoes, walk in their shoes for a little while. You know what I mean? There's a point of empathy that you kind of have to a degree. So that they kind of it becomes more of a humanized experience versus I'm Mr. Realtor, hear me roar. You know what I mean? And sending people
Yeah.
away, just bombarding them with all of our expertise and allowing them to feel comfortable to the place to where they want to continue to build that relationship with you towards making a very emotional and financial decision such as purchasing or selling a house. So that's what I have to offer.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that whether it's healthcare or higher education or real estate, I feel like people are still guarded, and asking those questions can help uncover what they're not willing to tell you. And I can tell you for certain that I've been in a doctor's office and lied, like maybe not given the whole truth on, hey, when's the last time you did this or did that, whether it's, hey, how many cheeseburgers do you eat a week? And it's like, no, just one. It's okay. Maybe that was a lie. But I'm sure higher ed, there's like maybe some embarrassment and some shame that some people might feel because they feel like they should be further along in their life that they are. But at the same time, gosh, you should be like so proud of yourself for even taking these next steps. And that's where we have to be those cheerleaders, and where you say that, hey, I can work on that contract where they, hey, I feel like you care. That's the key. We need to care. And that's where I think a lot of real estate agents gave our industry a bad rap, is where they were just in it to make a buck. And I have had people formerly on this team that would say, once I'm done getting paid, I'm done with you. Literally been told that as a team leader. I'm like, wow, that is crazy. And guess who is working with those people now that those people aren't, that person's not on the team? I am. So yeah, be kind, work hard. Exactly right. Matter of fact, I think I've got that shirt on right now. Work hard, be kind. Absolutely. And what you said about that quote, I may have been 2 weeks ago where we talked about Danny Meyer and the founder of Shake Shack and Gramercy Tavern. And, one of the things that he talks about is like, hey, at Gramercy Tavern, maybe we don't have the best food score, but we have the best favorite score. And what he's talking about there is people's feelings and how you make them feel. And that is inarguable, because you cannot tell me how I'm feeling. Those are my feelings. They belong to me. And you cannot, it is not something you can change. It is an inarguable thing. So tugging at those heartstrings and finding out what makes people feel the way they do and eliciting that response, I think is a wonderful and amazing thing. And that's what really we should be striving for in this industry.
Yep. And to give you guys like another really specific example, when we talk about agent client relationships and, just strengthening relationships. And when I say that you can get the answer to the test, imagine you went through school your entire life, and you knew that you were going to make 100 on every single test. Like, what do I need to do to be able to do that? Well, we have the unique opportunity by asking questions to get all of the answers to the questions that we're hoping to find out from somebody. And again, you have to remove any assumptions from the equation and just say, I'm going to look at this interaction as the time that I'm going to find out what's uniquely interesting to them and what they're looking for. And so when you ask those questions, like, well, what are you looking for in a realtor that you choose to partner with? Whether you've had an experience or not. So tell me about your past experience. What happened? What did you appreciate? What did you not like? And you can sit there and put these in your bank of like, okay, I'm understanding what's important to them, what's not important to them. You're asking a lot of questions, but then, um, and I bring this up because I think that, again, when I say that people like to say, oh, yeah, I like to sell, I mean, I've been guilty of this before where it's like you start meeting with somebody and say, yeah, this market's very advantageous for buyers right now. There's an opportunity to really negotiate. And I'm really good at negotiating. But what if their primary concern is not your ability to negotiate? What if their primary concern is somebody that's going to walk the property and point out things to them that you have experience looking for, having looked at a bunch of inspection reports, so that they don't feel like they're walking into something that's going to surprise them? What if that's the most important thing? So even if something is not your strong suit, somebody says, yes, I want somebody who's really, 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 really good at writing contracts, and you have a lot of issues with your contract writing, at least you can find out from them that that's important and just say, look, I'm going to make sure that we write the best and cleanest contracts for you. I'm going to make sure that we, look through these houses and scan them for things that there aren't any surprises on. I'm going to make sure that I've got the availability. Whatever you need from me is I'm going to cater my response to that, as opposed to just saying like, yeah, I'll show you a million houses in the world, all the houses that you want. And, I'm really good at negotiating. I'm really good at finding out what's going on, when really what their primary focus are these other things. And so, again, give yourself that competitive advantage that the majority of not just real estate agents, but human beings in general don't do. We live in a society where it's like we constantly want to tell people and show people, and like you want that gratification. I mean, social media adds to that, where it's like I get a like and it's like, yeah, it makes me feel good. And where that like comes from is you posting something out there. Very, very infrequently are the things that we post out there like, what can I do to help out? So if you think about that and you start changing those behaviors and start trying to learn about people a little bit more and say, I'm going to solidify what our next steps look like based on this, then you're going to have so many more appointments that are going to come as a result of it. And we're going to talk a little bit next week about summarizing to motivate. So we've talked about opening and framing conversations and why setting the tone right from the get-go is important, and first impressions are so important. Then overcoming and recognizing stalls and objections, and really getting into the discovery part of the conversation. Next week, we're going to start switching gears where it's like, all right, let's take all of this and take actionable steps. Like, what can we do to move forward, and what can we do to focus on progression? And I'll give you a little bit of a snippet. If you can get a lot out of people and you want to lead them to the next step, it's going to be very easy for say, hey, you told me these things were important to you. I have a solution in place that I think is really going to help out with all of those things. I'd love an opportunity to meet with you and really get into that. How does that sound? And temp check them on it. And you're going to encounter a lot more like, yes, I'm happy to do that, as opposed to, not really right now. And I'm putting a little bit of a bow on this because we talk about the power of open-ended versus yes and no questions. And there's a book out there, if anybody's ever read it, it's called Never Split the Difference. It was written by Chris Voss, I believe, and he was an FBI interrogator. If you ever go on, you can watch the videos on YouTube, or you can read the book where he talks about the power of asking a question that gets a no and a positive, which is to ask, would you be opposed to doing something? So if I ask you, hey, do you want to go out and go and see houses with me? You're giving somebody the opportunity to say no, because they don't know you. They don't, I'd like to go see houses, but I don't know the first thing about you. Are you going to annoy the hell out of me whenever we go see houses? I don't know. But if I sit there and ask you a bunch of questions and then put a little bow on it and say, well, look, based on what you told me, I think a good next step would be to just get out and see a couple of homes so that I can get an idea of what you really like and don't like in person. Would you be opposed to going and taking a look at a house with me this weekend? No. And that's a no in a much more positive way, because you're allowing someone to have their autonomy. You're not threatening their autonomy when you say, hey, do you want to go see a house with me? You're kind of putting them in a corner. It's almost like a deer being put in a corner. They're going to react by like kind of lashing out at you. But when you give them the opportunity to say no, and it's like, well, I can say no to this. Like, yeah, I'd like to go and see it. It's going to change your ability to get from one step to the next so much. And I'll be honest with you, I've done sales for a really long time, and I've always felt like I was very good at what I did. That question right there has been an absolute game changer for me in my business. And I ask that so much, not just in my business life, but my personal life. I'll ask my wife, like last night, we took our kid to gymnastics, and we were supposed to go and do a pickup order for groceries before that, but we were running a little bit behind. So I just said, would you be opposed to just going and grabbing some dinner right after this? And then we go pick up the groceries. We don't have to rush home. She's like, no, that's fine. And it's so agreeable to ask it in that way, and it makes sense. So it's like, if you guys start talking to people, whether they're past clients, whether they're Sphere, whether they're a Zillow, whether they're a web registration lead, you start going through that discovery process, getting past those objections, and then you say, I've got enough trust that I can suggest the next step to you. Hey, based on what you said, I think the best next step for us is to get on a Zoom call and let me show you what's going on in the market and the areas that you're looking at and really get a game plan in place for you. Would you be opposed to doing something like that with me? That will exponentially increase the number of appointments that you're getting, because I've experienced it. I'm somebody that for over a year scheduled over 7 new appointments every single week. That right there has definitely made that process a whole lot easier just by changing up those questions and that one in particular. So I was going to leave you guys with that nugget. I can't claim it. It came from Chris Voss. It's been very effective in my business. But again, I think you gotta earn some trust before you can ask a question like that, before you can get on to a next step. Otherwise, you're just somebody else trying to sell them on something. Ask the questions, understand what it is that's important to them, use their words back to them, summarize it, and say, based on what you said, I think a good next step is this. Would you be opposed to doing this? If you just go through it that way, it's going to be so easy to get appointments. Your show rate is obviously also going to go up exponentially as well. You're not going to waste your time with a lot of people that aren't showing up for appointments. So I'm going to end it right there. See what questions, comments, feedback, examples that we have.
Good stuff, Michael.
I'll pass 4 gas stations to get to the one where people know my name. Thinking of the Cheers theme song.
Yeah, shows your age right there.
There might be places that do what I'm looking for better, but I go where I have a relationship and feel valued. I think our customers and clients, man, I don't know if any of you like Cava. It's a newer concept. It's like Chipotle. It's delicious. I won't even go because the customer service there is awful. I mean, I would rather drive further to go to a Chipotle when I know that I like the food at Cava better, because at least Chipotle has their stuff together. You know, it's like, sometimes.
Well, all good. Great stuff. Thank you again for everybody attending in person, and we'll get this out there on the YouTube thing, and hopefully see you all next week. Got one more message. Make sure and say good stuff. Appreciate it, Omar. All right, guys. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and I hope you have a good, successful weekend. And Mark, hope that snow melts away soon for you, buddy.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Enjoy.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.